In the rolling hills of Appalachia, where forgotten towns lie in the shadow of crumbling mines, there is a road that appears on no map. Locals call it the Hollow Road. It's been part of local lore for generations, though few dare speak of it openly. Some dismiss it as mere legend, but there are those who know better, who have seen the strange fog that swallows up anyone who dares to venture too far down its dark path. No one knows when the Hollow Road was first discovered. Stories of it date back, at least to the late 1800s, when miners from nearby coal towns would vanish while traveling between work sites. Horses would return without their riders, and carts would be found abandoned in the middle of nowhere. The road seemed to shift and bend, sometimes appearing where no one expected it, other times disappearing entirely. In the 1970s, a group of hikers from Ohio found themselves lost while traversing the Appalachian Trail. They were an experienced group, but something about the terrain felt off. A dense fog rolled in suddenly, reducing visibility to almost nothing. They stumbled upon an old unmarked road, one not listed on any of their maps. It seemed well-worn, but eerily silent. Despite their instincts telling them otherwise, they followed it, hoping it might lead them back to civilization. It didn't. The hikers walked for hours, but the scenery never seemed to change. The trees loomed over them like dark sentinels, and the mist clung to their skin, cold and damp. At first they joked about the Twilight Zone feel of the situation, but as time passed, the unease grew. One of them claimed to hear faint voices, but the others dismissed it as nerves. As night fell, the fog grew thicker, almost tangible. Their compasses spun wildly, and GPS devices refused to connect. It was then that they realized they weren't alone. Silhouettes began to form in the mist, shadowy figures that moved just beyond the edge of their sight. Panic set in. The group decided to turn back, but the road seemed to stretch on endlessly behind them, winding in ways it hadn't before. No matter how far they walked, they remained trapped on the same stretch of road. One by one, the hikers began to vanish. The first to go was Brian, the youngest of the group. He had been trailing behind, and when they turned to check on him, he was simply gone. No sound, no struggle, just an empty space where he had been walking moments before. The remaining four pressed on, desperate now to escape. They began to hear whispers, strange voices calling their names from the mist. It was Jane who broke first. She ran, disappearing into the fog as the others called out to her. Minutes later, the same voices began mimicking her cries for help, growing louder and more distorted. The remaining hikers tried to stay together, but the road seemed to warp around them, twisting in ways that defied logic. Eventually, only two remained. They stopped walking, knowing that every step they took led them deeper into whatever this place was. As dawn approached, the fog began to lift, and they found themselves standing on an empty highway, miles from the nearest town. They had no recollection of how they had arrived there. Their last memories were of being lost on that strange, shifting road. The survivors never spoke publicly about what they experienced, but they confided in a few locals before leaving the area. That's how the story of the Hollow Road resurfaced in the 20th century, though many still dismiss it as an urban legend. But strange disappearances continue to happen. Travelers, hikers, and even truck drivers report finding themselves on an unmarked road, often after taking what they believe to be a shortcut. They all describe the same phenomena: the thick fog, the warped sense of time and space, and the unsettling feeling of being watched. Some claim to hear voices calling out from the mist, while others speak of seeing figures in the distance. Humanoid, but not quite right. Few make it back to tell their story, and those who do are never the same. Authorities dismiss the tales as hallucinations, the product of exhaustion or natural disorientation. But among the locals, the truth is whispered in hushed tones. The Hollow Road is a place that defies reality, a place where the boundary between our world and something far darker grows thin. And once you've stepped onto the Hollow Road, you may never find your way off. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more of this content. It lets me know people enjoy it and motivates me to continue to create it for you all. If you haven't already, check out my link tree in the description for more esoterica.